America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. It's Hugh Hewitt, and I'm inside the Beltway on a Monday in the muggy month of August. We're not in Milwaukee, where we were supposed to have the Democrats in convention, their quote virtual convention. I actually think Indians baseball will score higher in the ratings than the desultory march to the virtual studio of people you don't want to hear from, even when they were in power. The Joe Biden speech is going to be boring. It's all going to be so boring. I know they're ahead right now, but let's wait until the debates to figure out. I think the Wall Street Journal new NBC poll had Biden up by 9. We'll talk with Steve Kornacki about that a little bit later. I'm still on a buzz high from the Middle East peace deal between Israel and the United Arab Emirates that was midwifed by President Trump. And yesterday's Sunday shows ought to have been dominated by them. In fact, Robert O'Brien, the national security advisor, was on Meet the Press. Jared Kushner was on Face the Nation and Fox with Maria Bartiromo talking about it. It's the story that mattered. It's the story that should have gone wall to wall. The Middle East turned upside down, an earthquake, as Thomas Friedman called it. David Ignatius called it. However, there is this story about the post office, which is, honest to goodness, it is the definition of fake news. The Democrats have to somehow create some scandal or excitement because Russiagate fell apart, Ukraine impeachment fell apart. The president is brought home a major, major foreign policy victory. So they're out trying to get you to think. I don't know what they're trying to get you to think. But I saw my mail guy this weekend. We had our normal great talk. He is as reliable as the rain. It's the same old post office. They always run a deficit. Someday they'll figure it out. They always get money, and Democrats are trying to make you think Republicans are suppressing the vote. They're not. It's just the silliest dang story that I've seen in a long time. Let's do the news first. The peace deal between Israel and the United Arab Emirates turns the Middle East upside down. The Gulf Council met over the weekend. They affirmed the UAE's right to move forward. They rebuked Iran for threatening the UAE. And then Robert O'Brien, the National Security Council, went on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd, which remains the Sunday show of Sunday shows. And O'Brien said this, the president did lose his brother and his best friend, Robert, over the weekend, but he went on to say this, cut number 1.
Well, thanks, Chuck. That's a great question. Super to be back with you. And let me answer it. But before I do, it's a little bit of a bittersweet weekend for the president. We had this remarkable accomplishment with the Abraham Accords, but he lost his brother, Robert, who he said was his best friend yesterday. So I just want to extend my condolences to the president, the first family, as they mourn Robert Trump's passing. But I'll tell you, last week was quite an accomplishment. It was a result of very hard diplomacy, much of it being quarterbacked by the President of the United States himself on calls with Bibi Netanyahu and Mohammed bin Zayed. He really pushed this over the finish line, but it took a lot of courage by the other leaders as well. As you indicated, there have only been 3 of these peace treaties since Israel's founding, so it's a historic accomplishment. We think that there's momentum for some additional parties to join and to normalize relations with Israel. We fanned out as soon as this was announced and have talked to, I've been on the phone with leaders in the region. The president has, Jared Kushner has, Secretary Pompeo has. And so we're quite hopeful that we can build on this momentum. I can't give a timeline because these things are tough. You know, these are the toughest negotiations in the world to broker peace between Israel and the Arab and Islamic world. But we're confident that we think there are a couple of other countries that are going to get on board soon, and we're looking forward to that.
And then he went on to talk about who might be next. Cut number 2.
Look, it's possible that they could be next. The 3 great holy sites in Islam, as you know, Chuck, are Mecca, Medina, and the King of Saudi Arabia is the keeper of those 2 sites. But the other site is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and King Hussein of Jordan, and Jordan supervises that. One of the great things about this agreement is you're now going to have direct flights from those fantastic airports, both in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, into Ben Gurion and Tel Aviv. And we're going to have Arab and Muslim pilgrims coming to Jerusalem and going up to the Mount and worshiping at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And we think that's something that will be a great confidence builder. And so I'm hoping that King Salman and MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, see that development and realize that this would be great for Saudi Arabia. It would be great for the Arab people and for the Islamic world as well. So we're hopeful. We'll have to see what happens. But we're talking to a number of countries in addition to Saudi Arabia.
And then Robert O'Brien got asked about critics of the deal by Chuck Todd, and he responded this way, cut number 4.
Diplomatic mistake?
No, I think it was. It's exactly the opposite of that, Chuck. I think getting out of the JCPOA and showing our allies and partners in the region who are terrified of a hegemonic Iran that received over $150 billion under the JCPOA in sanctions relief. They didn't take that money to improve the lives of ordinary Iranians. They took that money and engaged in proxy wars in Iraq and Syria and Lebanon and Yemen and other parts of the Middle East. And so I think getting out of the JCPOA was the predicate for this fantastic deal between UAE and Israel. And look, the only people, you had Thomas Friedman coming out with an unqualified endorsement of the UAE-Israel deal, which I never thought I'd see, President Trump being endorsed by Thomas Friedman on this deal, and David Ignatius and others. I think the only people that were against the deal were the Ayatollah and maybe Ben Rhodes. But this happened because we got out of the...
That got the beast moment from the Free Beacon, the Washington Free Beacon, which is the cheeky and very, very readable Washington alternative to the Post, because Ben Rhodes is as flat as a pancake after getting rolled by the Secretary of State online, who just showed the sad Ben Rhodes on the night of the 2016 election sitting on the curb weeping. We need Paul McCartney's music while my guitar gently weeps with Ben Rhodes. And then the National Security Advisor rolls him over. It's interesting about Ben Rhodes. Never has one man thought so much of his own accomplishments, especially relative to what others esteem him. He's mentioned once in John Kerry's memoir, not at all in Hillary Clinton's, because they just don't like the guy. And I think he torpedoed Susan Rice's chances to be the vice president by virtue of the baggage that man carries. But Chuck is pushing Robert, as he should, right thing for Chuck Todd to do, on China and the DNI report, cut number 5.
Well, I think the DNI report was really terrific, and what the DNI report did, which has not come out before, is it detailed the influence and the efforts of China and of Iran to denigrate President Trump and to make sure that he's not reelected. It also talked about the Russian interference. As I've said, and as the president has made very clear, we're against every party, foreign party trying to get involved in our elections, whether it's the Communist Chinese, whether it's Putin's Russia,
right,
whether it's the theocracy in Iran. We want all of them to stay out of our election. And what we've done to make sure that happens is we've spent millions and millions of dollars hardening election infrastructure, working with 50 secretaries of states on cybersecurity. Right. And we've also sent very strong messages to all these countries with respect to Russia. I mean, we put so many sanctions on Russia, there's almost nothing left to sanction. And we're making it very clear to them. Well, look, these are foreign powers that are adverse to the United States. We're in a period of great power competition. And look, Russia and China are on the other side. But what we've done is we've pushed back. Unlike the past administration, we've sent Javelin anti-tank missiles to Ukraine when the past administration was sending them blankets and MREs. We've sanctioned Rosneft. We've done our best to stop Nord Stream 2, the pipeline from Russia to Germany, and have had tremendous success there. We've put sanctions on hundreds of Russians. We've closed their consulates in San Francisco and in Seattle. We've closed their diplomatic annexes here. We've expelled 60 Soviet or Russian spies from the U.S.
But Chuck breaks in, as he should, because he wants to ask about China. Cut number 6.
Question, though, if Russia... Right, and I understand it sounds like you're conflating. China may be rooting against President Trump, but you don't seem to have the same amount of evidence as Russia. But let me ask something on Russia.
Well,
you just talked about all of these things you've done.
I don't think that's true.
Well, we have no evidence. They released evidence about Russia. They have not released any of this evidence that you have said, though, Ambassador. Yeah. None of what you have said about China was not in that intel report made public. Are you going to make this Chinese?
No, what the intel report said is that there is information to suggest that they're doing that. What we're not going to do is release sensitive intelligence. So, but if you believe the DNI in Russia, then you got to believe them on Iran and China as well. So the media can't. Right. It's not a cafeteria where you can go through and say I'll take this and not that. They've made it very clear, and look, I'll come out today and say that there are other countries that would like to interfere in our elections as well, beyond Russia, China, and Iran. And they have different.
There are other countries out there, but the election will go forward. Stay tuned, America.